What's up, investors? It's the Russians yet. There is a quiet concern running through the Russian Federation right now. Not the kind seen on TV broadcasts or heard in official Kremlin statements, but the kind that travels in whispers, hushed calls, private telegram groups, and tense conversations behind closed doors. Not even much in Moscow, but all the way down to the southwest of it, in Chechnya. It is the realization that Ramzan Kadyrov is not well. Not like that we've never heard about it or that it comes as a shocker, no. But his health, no matter how aggressively his spokespeople deny the rumors, is declining. And the very moment Kadyrov weakens, the political architecture that Putin built so carefully in the North Caucasus starts wobbling. Because Chechnya is not just another region, it is a powder keg with a fuse that has never been extinguished, only extended for as long as possible. For 2 decades, Moscow managed to suppress the flame by placing one man in charge, a man whose loyalty was bought with money, immunity and absolute local authority. But Chechnya's loyalty was never to Russia. It was to Kadyrov, to his family, to the clan structures that have defined Chechen identity long before Moscow ever arrived. The Kremlin does not control Chechnya through institutions, laws or ideology, it controls it through a single man once again. And these men, they age, men fall ill and men die eventually. So the question becomes unavoidable. What happens if Kadyrov stops obeying Putin? What happens if his successor, if any, does not fear Moscow the way he does? What happens if the suppressed anger of 2 Chechen wars resurfaces? And not in a rebellion, the one that maybe most people expect, but in cold, calculated political defiance. The answer here is rather simple. The balance of power inside Russia would tilt so violently that the entire system could fracture, and Putin, with so much on his plate as it is, can simply miss this subtle transition. To understand what may happen, we need to understand how Chechnya became what it is today. After the Second Chechen War, Russia did not achieve victory, it simply reached exhaustion. Grozny was turned into ruins, tens of thousands of lives were erased, families shattered, entire bloodlines wiped out. The Kremlin realized that ruling Chechnya directly was impossible. Too much hatred, too much memory, too much pride. You cannot govern a people who refuse to kneel, simply saying. So Putin chose a very different solution. Find a Chechen who was willing to enforce Moscow's will in exchange for unlimited power. That man, as majority of us guys know, was Ahmad Kadyrov, the father. And after his sudden elimination, his son, Ramzan, conveniently took the throne. Not suspicious at all, right? Great way to start your political career. Billions of rubles began flowing from Moscow to Chechnya. Reconstruction projects, infrastructure, stadiums, special forces training centers, and most importantly, a private army loyal not to Russia, but to Kadyrov personally. This was not reconciliation, this was outsourcing rebellion management. Chechnya would appear kinda loyal, Chechnya would not revolt, Chechnya would even provide fighters when needed as a symbol of unity on TV. In return, Moscow would look the other way as Kadyrov built a state within a state, completely with its own laws, court, police, and intelligence apparatus. Kadyrov could do literally anything. Silence critics, run internal prisons, eliminate rivals, as long as he saluted Putin on camera. The Kremlin bought peace, but this peace purchased with fear and humiliation is never permanent. What's worse, the loyalty itself is an illusion, ready to fall apart at any unpredictable moment or because some kind of a random event. Kadyrov's convoy, for example, could be stopped on his way to Kremlin by a wannabe policeman and, well, that's it, it's over, turn the cars around and see you later, losers. Putin does not control Kadyrov, only Kadyrov does. Let's talk about this non-existent loyalty and so-called brotherhood in our next chapter. State media portrays Kadyrov as Putin's most loyal ally. Their meetings are staged to look almost affectionate, like a medieval lord and his most trusted knight. But beneath this performance lies a truth no official statement can erase. Chechen loyalty to Russia is an illusion. Chechen soldiers do not fight because they love Russia. They fight because their social structure demands loyalty to their clan first. This is the backbone of Chechen identity. Then comes the Kadyrov family, then Chechnya. Russia is just a distant fourth, at least, at best. This hierarchy never changed. It is only masked by slogans and handshakes. People unfamiliar with Chechnya assume that time heals wounds, but Chechens do not forget the past. The memory of Grozny burning or disappearing brothers, of Russian soldiers marching through ruins neighborhood, all of this lives inside every family, still. It just may be one generation past maximum. The hatred never disappeared, it was simply directed and suppressed by one man who understood the cost of letting it explode again. The propaganda that claims Chechnya and Russia are united is built on this fragile arrangement. It is obviously ridiculously untrue. Chechnya does not serve under Russian police. Chechnya maintains its own security forces. Chechen battalions do not integrate into Russian chains of command. Grozny appears at his own fortress, guarded by men who do not take orders from Moscow generals. The Kremlin allowed this as long as Kadyrov guaranteed obedience, but obedience given only to a single leader is obedience that vanishes when that leader falls. It is just as simple as that. Makes sense. Not a single other region of Russia experiences this level of freedom. So why shouldn't they attempt to claim it then, when the time comes? What happens when Kadyrov is no more? Let's talk about it in our next chapter. This brings us to the present moment. Kadyrov is ill. He appears less frequently, his public speeches are shorter, his physical presence, once intimidating and imposing, now sometimes looks strained. Even if his condition stabilizes, the image of invincibility is broken. And in Chechnya, where power flows through fear, respect and inherited honor, a weakened leader is a vulnerable leader. That is what matters the most, the image. The day Kadyrov can no longer stand in front of his forces, a power struggle begins. His son, Adam, is too young and lacks the authority to command the same respect. I mean, sure, his father tries to push him with all the tricks known to Chechen book of acquiring power, but it is not the same as holding power by yourself, as acquiring it yourself. People tolerate Adam, but just because Ramzan is still alive. Other clan leaders have been waiting, some silently, some impatiently, for that exact moment when Kadyrov's grips weakens. The Kremlin cannot simply appoint another Kadyrov. Chechnya is not a bureaucracy, it is a land of warriors, elders, bloodlines and depths. If Moscow tries to intervene directly, it risks igniting an immediate uprising. If it allows Chechnya to choose its own successor, it relinquishes influence entirely. And if a new leader comes to power and decides that the future of Chechnya lies not with obedience, but with independence, or even just neutrality, Putin's entire Caucasus policy vanishes, collapses overnight. And here is what makes the situation even more dangerous. Russia cannot afford another Chechen war, definitely not while it is already fighting in Ukraine, struggling economically, and facing internal discontent, let alone the condition of the Russian armed forces, which is barely holding together. Chechnya knows this, the Kremlin knows this, and other Russian regions know this as well. The moment Moscow appears weak, the spell of central authority breaks. And this will present the best opportunity possible for the Chechens to claim so long-awaited freedom. Chechnya is not dangerous because of its size. It is dangerous because of the message it would send. If Chechnya defies Moscow and gets away with it, every other region watching from the sidelines will understand that the Kremlin is no longer untouchable. Tatarstan still remembers its brief independence. Dagestan has dozens of ethnic groups that never fully integrated. Yakutia has resources Moscow depends on. Bashkortostan has an identity strong enough to resist assimilation. And Buryatia itself sacrificed the most. It's just a matter of principle for them at this point to not deal with or have anything in common with the Kremlin. The Russian Federation is not a stable nation-state. It's a patchwork empire held together by the memory of central force. But force must be visible to remain respected. If force becomes uncertain, regions begin to move. Kadyrov is this dam holding back that movement, not because he believes in Russia, but because staying aligned with Moscow is profitable and strategically beneficial for him. If a new leader does not share that calculation, or worse, if that leader feels compelled to restore Chechen honor after decades of humiliation, the consequences will cascade across the entire Russian system. The foundation of Putin's power in Chechnya has always rested on one man's loyalty, one man's fear, and one man's control over a region that never surrendered. That foundation is now shaking. Whether Kadyrov collapses quietly or defies Moscow in his final act, the outcome is the same. The balance of power in Russia shifts. Chechnya without Kadyrov is unpredictable, volatile, and dangerous for the Kremlin. A successor who is not loyal means that the empire begins to implode. The Russian Federation has always appeared strong because its borders were silent. If Chechnya breaks that silence, the entire country will hear the echo, and the Kremlin knows that it simply cannot silence that echo for the third time. Well, there you have it, guys. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support our work, there are links down below, for example, PayPal donations. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe